How a counting trick changed warfare forever. At first, it looked like a clever shortcut, a faster way to count, organize, and plan. But on the battlefield, it changed everything. To understand why a simple counting method transformed warfare, we have to step back to a time when battles were decided by visibility and instinct. Armies moved as masses. Commanders relied on messengers, maps, and intuition. Decisions were slow. Uncertainty ruled. As conflicts grew larger, this approach began to fail. Too many units, too many variables. Distance distorted information. By the time orders arrived, conditions had already changed. Victory depended less on courage and more on coordination. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. A mathematical shortcut designed to simplify counting large quantities. Instead of tracking every individual unit, it grouped them, reduced complexity, turned chaos into manageable blocks. At first, it was used quietly, to estimate supplies, to plan movement, to schedule attacks. The advantage was subtle but decisive. Commanders could now think ahead instead of reacting. They could model outcomes before committing forces. What made this trick powerful was not precision, but speed. It traded detail for clarity. Patterns emerged where confusion once reigned. Decisions became faster, more confident, and more lethal. Warfare was no longer just about strength. It was about computation. And once math entered the battlefield, it never left. As the counting method spread, its impact multiplied. Armies that adopted it could coordinate movements across vast distances. Supplies arrived where they were needed. Reinforcements were timed instead of rushed. Battles stopped being isolated events and became interconnected operations. This shift altered how commanders thought. Instead of focusing on individual engagements, they began optimizing the entire campaign. Losses could be anticipated. Reserves could be positioned mathematically rather than instinctively. Warfare became less reactive and more strategic. The trick also changed how enemies were perceived. Opposing forces were no longer just soldiers on a field. They became variables. Quantities to be estimated, compared, and minimized. Decisions grew colder, more calculated. The human cost was abstracted behind numbers. This abstraction created an advantage that was difficult to counter. Armies rely on intuition, could not match the speed of calculation. By the time they adapted, outcomes were already decided. The counting method compressed time. It allowed one side to move faster than the other could think. As technology advanced, the same logic scaled upward. Artillery placement, logistics, and later air power all depended on the same mathematical grouping. The battlefield expanded, but the underlying idea stayed simple. Reduce complexity, act faster. What began as a harmless shortcut became a decisive edge. Warfare was no longer won by who saw more. It was won by who counted better. The conflict deepened when this way of counting began shaping decisions before battles even started. Strategies were chosen because the numbers favored them, not because they minimized suffering or risk. If the math suggested success, action followed. This created a dangerous feedback loop. The counting method rewarded concentration of force. It favored overwhelming advantage over caution. Small gains were ignored in favor of decisive strikes. And because the numbers looked convincing, doubts were dismissed. As wars grew industrialized, the method scaled perfectly. Production targets replaced individual craftsmanship. Casualties became statistics. Entire populations were folded into calculations of capacity and endurance. The battlefield expanded beyond soldiers to factories, railways, and cities. The emotional core of the conflict was distance. Mathematics placed a buffer between decision and consequence. Commanders could plan destruction without witnessing it. Losses were reported as figures, not faces. Efficiency replaced restraint. Yet the same math that delivered dominance also introduced rigidity. When conditions changed unexpectedly, systems built on fixed calculations struggled to adapt. Surprise returned. Chaos broke through the numbers. The counting trick had reshaped warfare, but it had also narrowed it. Victory became measurable, and anything measurable could be pushed to its limit. The resolution emerged when militaries began confronting the limits of calculation. No model could fully capture morale, chance, or human endurance. Numbers could guide strategy, but they could not replace judgment. Modern warfare reflects this uneasy balance. Mathematics remains central. Simulations, logistics, and planning still rely on it. But experience has shown that over-reliance creates blind spots. The unexpected always finds a way through. The deeper lesson is not about war alone. It is about how abstraction changes responsibility. When decisions are made through numbers, consequences feel distant. Efficiency becomes seductive, and restraint must be actively defended. The counting trick did not make warfare more violent by itself. It made violence easier to organize. And once organization reaches a certain scale, intention matters less than momentum. Understanding this history matters today, because the same logic now shapes decisions far beyond the battlefield. And the question remains whether calculation will always outrun conscience. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future.